Yeah. I started the live.
Okay, awesome. Namaste, everyone. We're going to get started with temple service now. And thank you for joining. So I hope everyone gets something wonderful out of this that can help you in your life and in your path. All right, so I made a nice little video here, little opener. And yes, everyone is welcome and loved here, so you're always welcome. And that's also why I'm doing the YouTube live streams, because I want everyone in the world to be able to benefit and not be separated by distance. So sending love out to anyone that is joining on the live as well. People who guide you back to their own personal truth and finding joy and happiness in the life now. So there are ways of thinking and just really simple kind of aha moments when you realize those certain shifts and changes that really do affect your life on a grand level. And so being aware of those really can give you a real good shot at having some happiness, and really finding your soul's path and purpose here in this lifetime. And that's my passion and my joy, is to help people reach that. You know, enlightenment is something that's a lifelong process, and it continually happens. All right, so today we're going to be talking about right view within the Noble Eightfold Path. And for anyone that wasn't here for the last two services, the Noble Eightfold Path, if you can think of it like a wheel, and there's 8 spokes on it. And you know, of course, with the right view being the first spoke, and so we're going to get a little bit more into that, because you kind of build from one to the other to be able to integrate the teachings of this path and integrate that into your life. So I want to start with a quote here that is directly from the Buddha. So just to back up a little hair, the original Buddha was Siddhartha Gautama, and he was very sheltered in his life. His father made sure that he was surrounded by nothing but health, youth, and a lot of abundance. So one day he decided to go outside of the palace, and he had his mind blown about the real truth, and so that's where he began his path. So, and if anyone wants to catch up on the last 2 services, just let me know and I can send you a link to the course that can catch you up on that. But so as far as the quote that I'm going to share is, people threatened by fear go to many refuges, to the mountains, forests, parks, trees, and shrines. None of this is a secure refuge. None of it is a supreme refuge. Not by going to such a refuge is one released from all suffering, but when someone going for refuge to the Buddha, to Dharma, and Sangha sees the right insight, the 4 noble truths: suffering, the arising of suffering, the overcoming of suffering, and Noble Eightfold Path leading to the end of suffering. Then this is the secure refuge. This is the supreme refuge. By going to such a refuge, one is released from all suffering. So as far as the Eightfold Path and the right view, we're going to speak on this. Behind almost everything we do and say and think are views, some conscious and many not so conscious. Our views are orientations, perspectives, and beliefs which we understand ourselves and our world. They are the basis on which we choose to live our lives. Often our core views are so embedded and habitual that they are often not even seen, as if they are known and they are understood not as views, but rather as the way things truly are. Not all of our views are serving us. Many of our views, opinions, beliefs, and stories that we live by are the basis of our suffering. To counter this, the Noble Eightfold Path begins with right view. This is a perspective or a frame of reference that provides a simple, straightforward understanding of how to bring an end to suffering. Part of the great value of the right view is the direct and pragmatic way it shows the path to inner freedom. It points us to a direct experience, which is an important alternative to basing our lives on what we cannot know for ourselves. Buddhism emphasizes the two forms of the right view. One is the standpoint that what we do, what we say, and what we think, it doesn't exist just in a vacuum. Rather, that the physical and psychological consequences are related to our nature. If they are based on greed and hate, the consequences can be harmful. If they are based on generosity and kindness, the consequences can, of course, be beneficial. Whether or not this viewpoint is borne out 100% of the time, I think it is certainly true that we live by this view, and we are more likely to think, speak, and act in ways that bring us and others a greater well-being. So then the second view, the second kind of right view, is the perspective of the Four Noble Truths. These four useful perspectives for finding a greater freedom and happiness. We want to suffer less, and it helps to notice when we are actually suffering. So being aware of what is causing us the suffering. It is all too easy to distract ourselves from the actual suffering by doing things, getting on our phones, doing, whatever we can to just kind of step out of it. But being aware of the suffering and kind of asking yourself, what is the purpose behind this? What am I supposed to learn from this experience, rather than let me just break right on out of this and distract myself with something else. So the Buddha and the lessons are trying to get you to be aware, and not just try to push them aside, but to be present with the experience for a minute so that you can actually learn what it's trying to say, hear what it's trying to say to you. So the distractions don't really get rid of the suffering anyway, do they? No. They don't come back up again, right? And it's only fair because it had something to teach you, and so that's why you keep going through it until you learn. So it is actually a beautiful thing if you can think of it as a teacher rather than, oh, this bad thing, let me escape it. So the distractions are not getting rid of it, and they just kind of cover it up. Like, if you could think of like putting wallpaper over the cracks on the wall, it's still under there, right? That paper's just covering it up. It didn't take the cracks away. The only way to get the cracks away is to take action, get you some concrete, and actively fill those cracks in. Being aware that those cracks exist, having the intention to fix them, taking the action to go and get this concrete, mix it up, and being determined and seeing it through, and then you put the concrete on those cracks, and then you know you've done it. You put the effort into it. You had the intention, and you were aware. And so, if you can think of that as, and by the way that we deal with these situations that are coming to us and repeated patterns, it's going to keep repeating if you're not aware of what it's symbolizing. And it is really, it's not just one little thing, it's just coming in a different form to give you another chance to love yourself, your light, your path, and your happiness, and your joy, and your right to live in the moment and be present. So it's just giving you another opportunity. But they do come up in different ways, disguised in different ways. But until you actually face what's going on, you can't be free of it. So we have to be aware of what's really going on there in order to free ourselves from that. So I have a little video here next that I'm going to play that's going to give you a little more explanation. And I like to bring other perspectives in too, you know. One thing that I do is I try to help to make things seem a little more simple, but it is more complex. It really is. This is really complex work. But I do try to find a simple way to communicate it to people so that they can actually say, oh yeah, you know, this is me. And there are some really big words in Pali. That is the language that the Buddha spoke, Pali. And so there are some words that are going to come up and whatnot throughout the process. And great if you start to integrate and learn those, wonderful. But again, it is the meaning behind them that is the important thing here. So, and maybe one day, you know, during the week or whatever, we can all get together and actually go through the Pali words and actually, you know, maybe learn a few of them and get them in. But moreover, what I am most caring about is the meanings here. So.
Paying your bills on time raises your credit scores, right? Wrong. In fact, this is one of the 3 major credit score lies you are being told by the...
All right.
So I want to talk just a little bit about right view, about samadhi, right view. Right view is the first of the Eightfold Noble Path, and it's part of the Panya. You know, one way to think about the Eightfold Noble Path is Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Right conduct, mental training, right mental training, and wisdom. And right view is understanding the 3 characteristics and seeing the 3 characteristics of existence into everything and everywhere in our lives. And those characteristics, as we know, are the characteristic of anicca, or impermanence. Things are changing all the time. Some are changing quickly, some are changing slowly, but nothing is static, nothing is standing still. It's changing all the time. The second characteristic is of dukkha, or suffering, or one way to understand it is unsatisfactoriness. That there's nothing in our conditioned world that can ever be permanent, can ever make us stop wanting. Nothing in our conditioned world has the ability to make us stop wanting. And wanting is really the source of our suffering. That craving is, the second noble truth. That craving and clinging to something that will make us happy. And then the third characteristic is our interconnectedness, or the third distortion, or the third is that somehow we are a solid, permanent self, an entity that doesn't change, and that you know, is somehow is all alone, and the truth is that we're not that. We are something that probably can't be defined by concepts. No conceptual overlay will ever get to the truth of that. But in this moment, we can understand it as just the interconnectedness that we have with all of nature and with all of life. So those are the three characteristics. And if we don't have vibulosas, if we don't have distortions, that's how we're experiencing life, and that's what we're seeing. And we can know that when we're walking around, most of us who are not totally enlightened, that's the way that we experience the world. And that's the source of our suffering, source of the suffering for ourselves and for, you know, all of humanity and all sentient beings is, you know, the opposite of those truths are informed by greed, hatred, and delusion, by thinking that accumulation will make us happy, thinking that our individual selves need to be satisfied, and thinking that, you know, just not wanting a lot of the truth, you know, pushing things away and not accepting things as they really are. And I think that this is really true of a lot of us from so-called subordinate social locations. One important thing to do with our mindfulness practice is to decolonize ourselves from the inherent views in our society that we're less than, or that we have to act a certain way to be accepted, or look a certain way to be accepted. And, you know, that's not true. We are one expression of an aspen and a grove. That's absolutely okay, and this is how nature is expressing these elements in this moment, and of course it's okay. It is just looks different than the aspen next to it.
Rule number.
Okay. So, essentially, some of the things that she had talked about, I'm sure that you're like, yeah, that's true, right? It is a large part of our suffering comes from not discerning from our own self, with our own higher self present, our intuition, but just always going with everybody else, what everyone else has told you, and what everybody else in society thinks at large. And so we kind of do away with our own individual belief systems because we don't want to be like cast out from our community. So if we're not thinking exactly the same way as them, you know, they may be like, no, you know, you stay over there. But it is in that kind of taking your power back to start discerning your own truths and how are you being guided, rather than just clinging so tight to different things that you have been taught before. And have you ever analyzed these things? Have you ever said, yes, I do resonate with that, or no, I don't? And if you do, wonderful. If you don't, then definitely revisit these things that you hold as your truths and your value system, so that you can be authentic and you can be guided from your higher self in this journey. So that is something to be very aware of, that is a part of the process, is kind of going back through your belief systems and saying, I'm going to lay this aside because this was just taught to me and not something that I truly do prescribe for myself. So, and that is the first part of right view is starting to take notice to what have you just been believing because everybody else does as well. And that is where we begin to take that power back to be in our path, to be on this journey to enlightenment, is to kind of stop just believing in something that you were taught, but if you haven't found that the truth in it, if you don't resonate with it, then be okay to set some things aside and to allow your higher self to show you what really is the truth behind certain things. It's very important. So I do want to, before we go into a little bit more about the right view. Hi, welcome, Quinn. Great, yeah, just come on in.
Alright. Oh, I'm making my table.
Thank you so much. So, we just touched on the right view a little bit, and we're going to go back into that a little bit more. But I do want to pose a question and then answer from a perspective. So, what happens when we find that we've done some unskillful things in our life? Like, so think about the word karma. In Pali, it's kama, but so it means the same thing as what we think when we say karma. So, what do we think? You're like, oh, I've done this and this wrong or right. Let's leave the right and wrong out of it and think skillful and unskillful. Skillful being things that are going to elevate you in your path, and unskillful are things that kind of keep you going like this in the karmic cycle. So when you start to set aside some of these unskillful things and decide to put a stop to doing those, catching yourself and making the correction and replacing it with a skillful action, we start to lessen ourselves in the suffering, and we free ourselves from a little bit of karma that's going to take us where we're not trying to go, right? So if you can, kind of remember that the skillful actions and unskillful actions are very big here. So although the basic principle and the underlying actions might seem like the results might seem fairly simple, the way in which those results work out can simply be very complex. This is partly because a person can perform many types of actions in one day, and then think about in a whole entire lifetime, right? Think about your whole entire life prior to this moment when you start to be more aware of those. So we're going to talk more about, like, what about the things that you've done prior that were unskillful, and how does that work in your karma? So if you can kind of think of seeds that you've planted and the ones that have sprouted versus the ones that haven't sprouted for you. So I'm going to touch on that. So the image that the Buddha used to illustrate the principles of karma was a field planted with seeds. The seeds are ready to sprout, and some other ones are not. Where and what you are at the present moment is simply a measure of which seeds are currently sprouting. So your reality that you are in and that you're experiencing in the current moment is based off of which of your seeds are sprouting in that moment. So if you can think of this in by the way of when you replace the unskillful actions with now more skillful ones, then you're allowing those skillful ones to sprout, right? Now, if you kind of think of like a pure cup of water being poured into the ocean of salt water, how much of that pure water is, you've got this whole ocean and you've got non-salted water, just pure water, and you're pouring it into the saltwater ocean. you know, there's a lot more salt there, so you just got this little tiny bit. So the point here is that when you stop doing the unskillful actions and you replace them with skillful ones, almost think of that, the pure water that you're pouring in being more, right? So it doesn't completely erase the unskillful that you've done in the past, but now that you're in your reality, in your present moment, it kind of washes a lot of it and dulls it out. So it's not completely getting rid of it, but the more skillful actions that you integrate and that you start being aware of and choosing to use skillful actions versus unskillful, then you are then liberating yourself out of the unskillful karma. And over the course of time, and you start doing this more and more and more, you see how it is kind of washing away some of the things. Like I said, though, it doesn't completely get rid of it, but there's a point in your lifetime where when you start to do this and choose to do things that are going to support versus keeping you in this cycle, yes, and you can be liberated from those things that you did. Because your intentions have shifted. You were different then, and now you've come into an awareness, and that is what you're aligning with, and so therefore it goes a long way, is definitely what I'm trying to say here. So making the change today and day by day choosing to do skillful actions versus unskillful really makes a huge difference. So and you can be liberated from the karmic patterns that you've done prior. Okay, so now we're going to the next one. And if another commercial comes up on this, like I said, I get better at this each week, so something else I'm going to figure out how to do.
Illumination will follow.
Right view, here we go.
Right view. This is critically important. We're going to be talking about the Eightfold Path. We don't understand right view. We will not have the Eightfold Path. There'll be 8 path factors, but they won't be noble. They won't be the Arya Eightfold Path. So everything begins with right view, and the other factors, such as right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, right speech, are not what we would call right, unless they are informed by right view. Right view is the beginning. All things follow it. When one has right view, it's like the sun coming up in the morning. Illumination will follow. If the sun doesn't come up, there will be no illumination. The other simile that's used for right view is the seed simile. So right view is like a seed of a delicious fruit or some sort of sugary kind of jaggery or something like this, which was very popular in India at the time. And if that seed is not in place in good moist soil, that plant won't appear and there won't be any delicious fruit. And even if you have the right soil and the right moisture, if the seed is not there, no delicious fruit. So this is the essence. Right view is the seed. All the other things are the soil and the moisture factor. Of course, right view without cultivation, without maintenance, without watering, will not appear or appear in a very feeble form. But right view is the condition without which nothing will follow. Now, right view, of course, the first idea about right view is the Four Noble Truths. And the Four Noble Truths are the essence of right view. It's a preoccupation, a focus. All attention is focused on the preeminent feature That is, human distress, human suffering, unsatisfactory experience of humans. And this we have to investigate and bring into light, not to avoid, not to deny. So we have to bring it into light with the right emotive quality behind it as well. This kind of investigation really is not done well in fear and anxiety. So right view is not terror-inducing. It is alarming in some ways, in a good way. You basically, before a ship goes down, you want the alarm to go off. You want the fire alarms to go off. The fire alarms are not to scare you, they're to alert you to the danger of the situation. So, right view, beginning with, there is danger, there's suffering, there's a problem. This has to be heard, and also has to be heard in the right way. The best attitude to take in an emergency is to remain calm in the emergency. But you really have to do something about it as well. The alarm has gone off, and we have to do something about it. So that's the spirit of the Four Noble Truths. However, right view has other implications, and more or less what we would call mundane right view. It's very interesting what they go through. One of them is simply, there is, or there are, mother and father. It's a very brief and cryptic sentence. There is mother. There is father. That's part of right view. Very interesting. What is it saying? It's saying actually that these certain sort of family relationships, the absolute necessity for having a father and a mother, you don't get born without a father and a mother, is a real thing. It's not a mere convention. It's a real thing. And there are real relationships there. The parents to the child and the child to the parents. And you will see in all developed civilizations that there is a strong concern and regard and necessity for family concerns with the dynamics of families and the patience and goodwill and generosity that is required on the part of both the child and the parents. Recently I was looking at a documentary on what's called feral children to see what is it, how does a human behave without being raised by humans. It's quite tragic actually. They are deeply warped and deformed. They don't ultimately ever recover. And if this occurs in the early part of life, the first few years of life, occasionally kids are raised by animals like dogs or wild animals. They don't ever recover from that. They don't learn speech, they don't learn empathy, etc. So we are creatures that require nurturing. Not all creatures require nurturing. Fish and so forth don't require a mummy. They just get hatched out of an egg and swim away. So, but humans do. And there's a two-way street there. We have obligations back in both directions. And we have to appreciate our humanity. Without care, at least a caregiver, you might lose both your parents very early in life, but somebody has to raise you. And without some sort of nurturing care and language and the experience of empathy, you really will not become human. So there are cases where people are raised in these terrible orphanages where there aren't any staff to actually take care of the child other than to just feed them, change their diapers. So they also turn out to be incredibly warped and stunted. So it's not merely a matter of being around humans, it's a matter of having communion with humans. To be a human requires nurturing by humans and nurturing. So this is something to be brought in. The Buddha is very concerned with loyalty and the patience and so forth that is involved in families. That's part of right view. It's very interesting. The other part is a commitment to the idea there is this world and a world beyond. That, strange to say that there is this world. It's possible to have philosophies that deny the existence of this world. And certainly, very commonly, to have philosophies that would deny the existence of a next world. So what they're saying is that to have right view, one must have a conviction of continuation beyond death. Now, how do they come up with this? How do they rephrase this? They call it choosing between views, making wise choices between views. So it's not that it has to be proven or demonstrated. It's a matter of selectivity. You're selecting views. And if you select certain views, such as at death, all that I am ceases, there is no consequences or continuation beyond that. That's a choice, that's a selection out of various possible views. Some people may be convinced that it's the only selection, that there's the only evidence points to that. In the text, they simply disagree. It's based on, it might be based on reasoning, it might be based on tradition or persuasion. Those are not considered to be the strongest or the kind of right references for establishing yourself in right view. So it's a choice of wisdom about what you're going to do with your life and how you're going to view it. And it's really a choice. And this is liberating for a lot of people. They don't realize there are choices to be made about views. There's no compelling evidence that would absolutely determine your view. There are choices to be made. The next word I use is conviction. Conviction is your choice should display itself in the way you feel day by day and the way you act and speak day by day. That's when it's conviction. Some people ask me about what I believe. The very word belief is problematic, but it's not really a belief if you don't act on it. You can say you believe something, but if it doesn't actually inform your speech and actions, it's not a belief. So I use the word conviction. You are undertaking a view of things which shapes your speech and actions, and you can't fool yourself. It has to be sincere as well. It's an internal decision and has great benefits. So there are gifts and fruits of gifts. This is another part of right view. So there is generosity and there are results of generosity. Not, again, you can have views where it's why be generous, everybody for themselves. All kinds of arguments against generosity and for selfishness. There's all kinds of stuff about that. It's not an automatic, obvious thing, but to have the right view is that there is generosity and there are results from it. Others say that there are no results, or that you should not consider results. In fact, you should consider results. It doesn't make your acts of generosity selfish to know that there are results from this, positive results. This is very important. This is typically poorly or absolutely not understood and not comprehended in the West. I give endless tea time talks explaining this point again and again, and people are quite appear to be having heard it for the first time. They might have gone to meditation retreats for decades and they haven't somehow heard this. This is the critical element that really enriches your humanity. To hold these views is the heart or the emotional structure responds to this. And this tells us something. And even if you're some sort of evolutionary biologist or evolutionary psychologist, you might understand this, that there is a system, an evolutionary pattern of nerves and so forth in the body. And when you manage to get the right formula right view of things, the system lights up. And it lights up in a very convincing and fulfilling way. And if you have the wrong view, the system does not light up. And that system will give you trouble. You will know that some of the lights aren't on. And when some of the lights aren't on in your emotional structure, you will feel a sense of lack, dryness, coldness, anxiety, fear, irritability, depression. All of these things are because the right circuits are not being flooded. So this right view, this mundane right view, is how to light up these human circuits. And the super-mundane, the ultimate right view, is to illuminate some circuits that are very rarely accessed by humans. They're really hidden circuits, and they are only accessed by a small percentage of people. The other mundane right view, the other ones that acknowledge the relationship, the intimate relationships of family and friends, practice of generosity, and the conviction of consequences beyond this very life into other lives and into other dimensions, are necessary to light up the human circuitry. So this is what right view is. And by the way, again, I want to emphasize that these are selective. You are selecting these views. You don't need to have ultimate scientific proof of any of this stuff. Please don't wait. Don't wait for absolute logical arguments which are undeniably confirming it. Don't wait for these things. The Buddha also dismisses that approach, waiting for ultimate evidence, waiting for the absolutely perfect logical argument. You don't have time for this. You need to experience the flood of well-being that comes from both mundane right view and the aspiration, which is not for everybody. You can still be a Buddhist and still not have ultimate right view, but you must at least have mundane right view. This is critically important to get this and understand that much of your meditation will be in vain if you don't have the initial compass of where you're sailing. You'll be just drifting and sailing around. You might have periods of time of kind of serenity and so forth, but they're interruptible and they're not going to be enriched. If you don't have right view, the abiding in the deep serenity and joy will not be nourished and sustained. It will be undersized and shaken. So this is the critical nature of right view. And so one should spend some time thinking about this, because we are in a society and a culture which fundamentally denies right view, especially in the more academic world, the scientific world, the technological world, is quite fundamentally in denial of right view. That will have consequences. We will see social consequences. The complete abandonment of right view is a very recent thing. And by the way, only a certain fairly small percentage of the world population really is a fundamentally materialist, annihilationist kind of attitude. It's only a small part of the population. It's surprising that it's not more popular, considering that science is so dominant and that materialism is so dominant. It somehow has not taken off, and I'm quite amazed, because it seems that there's an intuitive element in humans. They don't have to be very sophisticated, but they kind of know what works for the human heart. They don't always have undistorted right view, but they will regularly have a very strong conviction about the nature of one's close relatives and family. Also convictions about generosity, that it does have good results, and that it's a necessary part of human existence. And they will also have convictions that there is some sort of possibility of existence beyond this. They will come across this and it will be deeply compelling to them, and they will have convictions about this. And they may be very unsophisticated, and they really can't maintain good arguments against highly sophisticated philosophers or scientist kind of arguments. And yet they continue to hold these views. That is interesting about human nature. Well, we shall see about this experiment, but I kind of feel that humans will always gravitate, the core of the emotional structure always gravitates back to this. And wherever it's absent, whenever they try to deny this view, bad things happen. Things fall apart. Life becomes painful. Such things as addictions and strange behavior and even kind of calculated, treating the whole populations as if they were almost inanimate objects, and including animals, treating them as if they were machines rather than beings, and treating humans as if they were kind of machines rather than beings. That is a feature of this materialistic annihilationism view. So bad things happen with that. We are yet to see in history how it all plays out. But this is all part of this very, very interesting area of right view. So please reflect and ask yourself, do I have right view?
And we're gonna work on that. We've got some different things that we're gonna to contemplate over the next week too, that will help you to be more aware of where your views are, and just kind of doing a little analysis, and I can make a copy of this for everyone. But the way this is done, it's kind of based off of like a 4-week, but I personally think that if we can kind of merge them all and do the work together, being aware of all 4 of the different aspects, rather than, one part for 1 week, one part for the next. So first of all, I'm going to go over the 4 different ideas, and then I will talk about each one, about how we can integrate these together and be more aware over the next week, and kind of be able to start catching ourselves and being more aware, because that's where it all starts. Being aware. We just live so much of our life kind of asleep to our own motivations, and how we just kind of bounce from one thing to the next without really putting our puzzle pieces together, if you will. Like we get more and more every single day, but how many people actually put those together for themselves? A lot of people look outwardly for answers for things, but you're constantly receiving these puzzle pieces. So start doing the work and putting them together, and like really get back to your true authentic self and your divine guidance. So the inventory of views is one. Keeping in the ease of view is another part. Reflecting on liberation, and questions about right view. So starting with the inventory. Spend the week noticing your primary views, your orientations, and your beliefs that you live by. Just take more notice, like habitually what you're doing. Oh, well, this is based off of this view that I collected from when. So it can be useful to consider what, if any, deep, unnoticed views underlie the more obvious ones. What role do the views have in your life? What is your relationship to the views? Which views do you have that are not beneficial to you? Which views are beneficial? As you consider the questions, it can be useful to write them down in a journal. So if you can start keeping a journal about this is going to be some really good homework for you over the next week. So as you consider these questions, it can just write them down, and then also you can go back and reflect on it all in all. Even a year from now, to look back on it and be like, wow, that really was the starting point to where I am now. So it's really a wonderful thing to keep up with this journey. So keeping ease in view. For this part of the exercise, it will be useful to understand the difference from ease and relaxation. Relaxation has more to do with the lessening of tension and stress, and that is felt in contrast to tension. Ease has more to do with the inner peace and harmony that exists without any reference to tension. It is felt more as something that exists in and of itself. So relaxation is more of a relief, but ease is a state of being. So really just kind of as we're going through this inventory of our views, if we can measure our level of tension and where our ease is, and this is really going to help you be aware and be guided to what really internally feels right to you. You know, because we can have something in our mind that says, oh, no, this definitely is a view, but it could be out of fear of being cast out by other people that you hold that view. But that ease or tension is really going to give you some real clarity on how internally your body is receiving and going through these different views that you have. So it can be a clue. And that's why I integrated all of these instead of separating them, because I truly feel like one's a clue to the next. And it really does help you get in more of a full understanding of how not only your brain's perceiving it, but your energy and your physical body. Okay, so with that exercise, you'll also notice times when you have a sense of ease, and notice the small moments of ease that appear briefly throughout your day, perhaps even during stressful occasions. So you could have some stress about something, but then you may find that an ease arises, like you're like, oh, I got this. It's just something that needs to be handled, and you just kind of get into the action of doing it, and so kind of feel eased about it instead of like, oh, a lot of tension. So be aware of that, and make some notes in your journal about that. And if you know how to bring more ease into your life during this week, do so to whatever extent possible. So the infinity breath, the chanting, anything that you can do when you are now, because now we're noticing it more, right? So anything you can do to bring some ease to those tension situations, steward yourself and self-love yourself enough to care for yourself in those moments and make that shift when it's being presented, when you're becoming aware of it. So ease yourself and love yourself in those times. So now, reflection on liberation. The Buddhist right view is not a karmic imperative to belief of some truth. Rather, it is a perspective that supports the goal of liberation from suffering, often called awakening. So, right? Which beliefs do you have about liberation or awakening? Are any of these beliefs obstacles to practicing on the path of liberation? How important is the possibility of reducing or ending suffering for you? Are you motivated by other goals that may interfere with overcoming suffering? What ordinary or small experiences of liberation from suffering do you have on a daily basis? So I want to back up just a second there. It's important to celebrate all the little steps here, all the little aha moments. It is important to be aware and celebrate those and be grateful for those. Because one thing I do know about the divine and your divine higher self and your guidance is that when you are aware and you do share that gratefulness and that joy of those, even the small little triumphs and everything, that's essentially just basically saying, thank you, I'll take more. I'm absorbing, I'm integrating. So be aware of those moments. And then also, what role do these have in supporting your practice? So integrate that with the other ones. And then we have questions about the right view. So during this process, you're going to have some questions that come up. You're going to have some things that, your soul guides you to. One thing I have also experienced is, when you're working on your path and you're having these moments and you kind of answer one question for yourself, three more arise. You've got three more. So, but it is a trail of breadcrumbs, and these questions are not for nothing. They're not silly. They're not, they're part of your path and your guidance. So these questions are important. So write them down, and we can definitely talk and share them. And this is a safe space, so please don't ever think that your question might be silly or you're going to be, frowned upon or anything like that for bringing it up. It's all welcome here. This is a journey that we're all on together. We're here for each other. So, no question is too silly. So just get past that right now. Just chunk that and say thank you for however you served me in the past, but I don't need that anymore. This is not a place for that. So any question is not too silly, and it will be something great that we can share together. So, and like I said, I can share this whether you want to snap a picture of it after service, or if you want to make a hard copy of it, whatever is going to work best for you. I do have a couple quotes, and then we're going to go on to our chanting and breath work and attunement. So, a couple quotes about right view. One tries to abandon wrong view to enter into right view. This is one's right effort. One is mindful to abandon wrong view and to enter and remain in right view. This is one's right mindfulness. Thus, these three qualities, right view, right effort, and right mindfulness, run and circle around right view. So all of these folks go together, of course, in the path, but they're also kind of designated. Certain ones help certain other ones. And so the point we're making here is to remember that right view, right effort, and right mindfulness kind of circle around that right view. So it takes all three of those to achieve what we're trying to achieve here at the start of the path. And yes, those are the next ones on the path, but you have to be aware that in order to fully get, as he was talking about, the mundane and then the supreme of right view, in order to get to that supreme, we do have to then work a little bit more on our right effort, our right mindfulness, as well as our right view. So, of course, starting with the right view, making the kind of checklist for your own self with like, where are your views, where were they before, which ones do you resonate with, which ones bring you ease, which ones bring you tension, which ones are you believing just strictly because since you were born, you were taught it, and everybody said this is how it is, So this is the time where we really want to go through that process of what are our belief systems, where are we, because that's where our reactions come from, right? Our viewpoints and what we believe in certain things. And so if you find that you're reacting to things and you're not okay with your reactions, I guarantee you it stems from a viewpoint that you have that's embedded into your energy, your mind, and into your reactions. So the only way to truly fix that is to be aware of the seed that is growing, that's letting that come and sprouting in your life. So the only way to cultivate that garden is to be aware, right? So we have to go back through and say, this is what I resonate with, this is what I no longer resonate with. So I hope that this exercise that we go through is going to be very helpful, and I know it will be. If you do it, it's going to help you. And so we can talk about this also next week. So another thought point is our happiness and the happiness of those around us depends on our degree of right view, touching reality very deeply, Knowing what is going on inside and outside of ourselves is a way to liberate ourselves from suffering that is caused by wrong perceptions. Right view is not an ideology, a system, or even a path. It is the insight we have into the reality of life, a living insight that fills us with understanding, peace, and love.
Namaste.
All
So I
right.
want to share something with you that can help you during
That's the
meditation.
words on this part. Now, so you'll be happy.
Just to still your mind, quiet yourself, and allow more access to hear your higher self. Yogena Tasha Bodhenu Vajra Travashati Kena Yopakuratdim Rabadam Idam Patanjaliam.
We're gonna go one more time.
Self and allow more access to hear your higher self. Yogena Tasha Bodhenu Vajra Travashati Kena Yopakuratdim Rabadam Idam Patanjaliam.
What do you think? One more time?
I think you go one more time.
All right.
Hear your higher self. Yogena Tasha Bodhenu Vajra Travashati Kena Yopakuratdim Rabadam Idam Patanjaliam.
So I have a question. Did it pop up in anybody's head over the last week? The budum. Did that come to you at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sketchy.
Yeah. Budum. All right. All right. And I'm gonna join myself. Just go around and do a little attunement with everyone.
can share so we can share Reiki healing of the mind
Okay.
with all. Namaste.
Yeah, we kind of touched on that a little bit before. It's like it's all teachers, every bit of it in this journey. Either we're not quite there yet, and so we need to go through a certain cycle again. So if you can be more positive about viewing the things that you go through instead of, oh, somebody's out to try to make me suffer, but seeing it with a higher perspective that it is a teacher. What you're going through is your reality, and it comes back to what seeds are sprouting in your life. So if you can see also the work that we're going to do over this course of this week, being aware of how we're feeling, our tension or our ease in certain situations, rooting those back to a belief system, and then making a choice of whether or not to de-weed that from our garden or start watering it a lot more, like, giving it that nurturing love to support its growth. We are the stewards of the reality that we experience in our nows, and that's the root of it, literally the root of it. And it's not too late to do the work. It isn't. It's like, yeah, you still have things in your garden that are not pleasant, but we are the gardeners, and so we can make that choice to go back in with awareness of what is even in your garden. If you don't know, how are you going to know what to weed out, and then what to water and nurture more? So we have to become aware of, first of all, what those seeds are that are planted in the garden, and do away with the ones that we don't resonate with, that don't bring us that I know that's a truth for me, and the ones that are like, well, that was planted by someone else and I just kept watering it because I was told to. Well, if you don't resonate with it, then be okay with plucking that thing out of your garden, and that way something that is skillful and something that is nourishing for your life and your path to enlightenment can grow in its place. So that's the purpose of this work that we're going to do over the next week. And then once you are kind of thinking in that process and whatnot, this is the work that you'll continually do, because now you're paying attention to start focusing on this, right? So it's not like, yeah, we're going to do this homework this week and then it's done. You're just kind of like aligning yourself to where you become more aware of these things. And that is going to become a part of your path in your life, that no one can take that from you. No one. You're like gaining some wisdom, and you're stewarding, and you're going to start doing that gardening work and making sure that your garden stays flourishing for your highest good and your highest, path and timeline, so that we can all get to enlightenment in this lifetime. That's our goal here, is to be happy in the now, to find peace and joy and harmony, and to complete the mission and the work that we came here to do, which is getting to where we remember who we are and why we're here. So, all right. So with that being said, I've got another little thing I made for us. Awesome. All right. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming today. You're doing yourself amazing by honoring your mission while you came here, and start asking yourself questions, start questioning things, start discerning every single thing that happens in your now has a purpose. Nothing is for no reason at all. So it's just become more aware of the things that you're being gifted, whether you consider it on this side or that side, it doesn't matter. Be aware and start writing things down, and before long you're going to start seeing such a transformation, and you're just going to just keep growing and growing. So it's just beautiful. All right, I love you all. Thank you so much. Namaste.
I clapped. I was clapping for you. You were going for this, and I was going for
Hey.
Oh,
what's
we
wrong with a clap?
stopped at
Yeah.
111. That's perfect. It's recording for